Hello, everyone, and welcome to a podcast with the Garden State Film Festival. I am Lauren Konkar Sheehy, the executive director. To my right is Brian Sheehy, board member of the Garden State Film Festival. And joining us today is Chance Kelly, who is not only an actor, writer, and podcaster, but also he's an honorary member of the Garden State Film Festival board. Welcome.
Thank you very much. How are you?
Good, thanks. We have you on today because we're huge fans, and I have a couple of questions from other fans that can't call in, but they wanted me to ask you a few questions. So tell us all about your podcast called The Island.
It's actually Island.
Island.
That's fine. Either one. It's the 300-year history of the island of Manhattan, starting from 1609, which is when Henry Hudson came and found the island and discovered the river that bears his name. It's from then until 1909. And I chose those dates because, well, for the obvious reason of starting with Hudson. And I just felt that I was going to go until I think consolidation was 1868. I might be wrong on that. Sorry, but it was right around there. But I thought take it a little further. And to me, in my mind, William Randolph Hearst sort of brings it into the modern age in some way. And it's 1909. I have a fascination with the history of Manhattan and the history of New York. And the more I looked into it, the more fascinating it became to me. And it's something I've been kind of conceiving, conceptualizing for a long time. And it just finally was the time to, start doing something with it.
So I love listening to it because my sister and I just closed our eyes. The way you describe everything, it's literally a story that we can visually see everything the way. So let's talk about the writing and the researching and everything that goes into this, because this is very detailed. This isn't just like, hey, New York is here and here's this spot. This is specific details where I'm like, my sister especially is like, how does he know that? Where does he get all the information?
Well, let's put it this way. If I was working more as an actor, it wouldn't be nearly as detailed. But I made the mistake of making good friends with the top historians in the world on the subject.
Nice.
And they keep me very, very honest. And I mean, these guys are the top. If you pick up a book about this subject, you will see if it's not by them, you'll see them in the footnotes and cited here and there. Charles Gehring, Yap Jacobs, and all the other guests I have are all very highly regarded scholars and professors and historians. And that's where I get the info. I mean, I read the books, I read the sources they recommend, and I read their books and I interview them. And I never would have known a fraction of this if I hadn't kind of, wandered into that world.
Wow.
But the stories, and again, the reason it's so fascinating to me and the reason I'm so passionate about it is because it's not told enough at all, really. Right? I mean, when you went to school, Lauren, American history was what? I mean,
I have no idea.
You have no idea. Okay. So
I don't think I learned much, but
let's go to the Rhodes Scholar to your right.
Yes.
Brian, what sums up American history in your memory?
Well, I remember it obviously was just pre-Revolutionary War, right?
Right.
Start about there.
Yes.
And then you would go through, the presidents and the Constitution. You would then pick up, going into this, the different territories that we acquired. And then you would do the Civil War. And then going forward, it was just a development treaties we made with other countries. So, to your point, Chance, you've always been into history and you've found it fascinating. I'm the same way. I'm a former Marine, so I have, read a lot and saw a lot of movies about Civil War, the different world wars, even wars that had nothing to do with our country. Because I always wonder, why do we keep making this mistake and going back into war? But so my question is, So I'm just a fan, I just research and I know you are. What was the jump off for you that said, all right, I'm going to dig down and I'm going to really go down this rabbit hole and this one specific thing?
Well, it goes all the way back to when I was at NYU, when you and I were playing rugby together,
Right.
and we were formative young men. And I was walking up LaGuardia Place one night, and there was this outdoor display that was put together by, I don't know if they were connected with the college or something else, but it was, the purpose of the display was this little section of the block here is to be made up to look like the topography that was here before colonization. And it was like, it looked like you were walking in the woods, and you weren't in the woods, you were in the West Village. So I'm like, wait, and it just struck me in a certain way. And though I didn't grow up in the city, I grew up coming into Manhattan from a very early age. And I always had this real fascination with the city. And that one moment of seeing, wait, this was woods here. And then I have a bit of an imagination.
Yeah.
My imagination started going to the point where and then I just started looking up. I said, let me look at what is the history of Manhattan. I have no idea. And that was 30 something years ago. And I just started, reading and digging deeper and deeper. And then you ever see this book?
No.
That looks so heavy. It looks like a brick.
This is so cool.
Oh.
This is all about the geological
yes,
elements of Manhattan Island. What was here when they found it before European colonization, and it's incredible. I mean, 30 different varieties of orchids, 25 different varieties of edible berries growing on the island. The fish literally jumping out of the water. The oysters were a foot wide. And that's just, this is just scratching this. I mean, this is just some of the information.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, you guys had said, that what your recollection of what American history was encapsulated. What you essentially said was it reflected the British and then the American version of what happened. I think a large reason why a lot of this stuff is not told is because it's just not that convenient to tell it.
Right.
The Dutch component complicates it, right?
Right.
And when the English stole it from the Dutch in 1664, and they stole it straight up, they didn't have any interest. They had nothing to gain, as far as I can see, in preserving the historical documents, of the Dutch colonization, the previous 55 or so years. It didn't matter to them. What mattered was the city worked unlike any other city, certainly any other city in the colony, but unlike any other city in the world. And that never changed.
Wow.
So from 16, this colony technically was founded in 1625 as a city, as a municipality of New Netherland, the colony of New Netherland, which came to be centered in the capital of New Amsterdam, which is, it's not all of Manhattan. It's the southern tip where you used to work, downtown, that's it.
5 points.
Well, yeah, not even 5 points was the woods back then. This was,
wow.
Isn't that so cool? Yeah.
Well, you know where Wall Street is.
Sure.
You know that.
Yep.
It was all below that.
Amazing.
When they founded it, you know where Bowling Green is.
Sure.
Charging Pole. It was below that.
Amazing.
Because the fort was pretty much where, the Alexander Hamilton Customs House, a beautiful big rectangular building.
Okay.
It's now the Museum of the American Indian.
Yes.
Sure.
Right. It's just east of the park there.
Okay.
That was pretty much where the fort was.
Right.
And they had 30 bark houses, basically holes dug in the ground, covered in bark. And this is where the Europeans were living. This is not where the Indians were. Wow. And by the way, they called them Indians. So it's not necessarily politically incorrect. If people feel it is, I apologize.
Right.
But it's written in the documents from the 1620s and 1630s. They refer to them as Indians. So Native Americans, Indians, Algonquins, same thing.
Interesting.
But-
Interesting. Because I'm sorry.
No,
Lord.
go ahead.
Because see that you're giving me something I didn't know. I thought that that Manhattan was much more at that point developed further north. You know, when you're saying, I mean, you're talking the very southern tip of Manhattan, and see the reason that well, I'm kind of going out of order here, but what you said on your reflection that time when you saw you're like, whoa, this was woods, right?
Right.
And I remember watching a documentary about when they built City Hall,
Mm-hmm.
and they put the marble in the front. And they said they put like just plain old brick on the back, and they were like, no one's going to see that.
They thought
Yeah.
no one would ever live there. And I mean, what,
No one's going to live. Yeah,
isn't it crazy? But that is how, and that's how Manhattan went.
yeah,
The history of the West Village, the first colonists in the West Village were freed blacks. So, and this happened during the Kieft administration, which will be season 2 of my story. And Kieft was a very controversial director of the colony. He started what has come to be known as Kieft's War with the Native Americans, with the Indians, with the Algonquins. And he was by the end, he was a horrific figure. I mean, you know, had started this horrific war that killed scores of colonists and scores of Indians, and it was just brutal. And he was replaced by Peter Stuyvesant, who would be the last director of the colony and probably by far the most impactful. But of all people, it was Willem Kieft who deeded the land to these freed blacks in what is today the West Village, and they were some of the first, as far as I know, they were some of the first African American citizens to own and occupy property and start farms in Manhattan, in the whole colony. No, I'm sorry, in all of North America. It's not documented anywhere else that happened. And again, this is the 1630s. This is what's going on. Anne Hutchinson, you know that name?
yes, sounds familiar. Yes,
but you don't know who she is, right? And
No.
It's okay because no one does. She was a Puritan cast out from the Plymouth colony.
Okay.
Okay, so she was English. She was a Puritan who came across, not on the Mayflower, but shortly thereafter. She was cast out of England
Right.
for her. She really didn't have incredibly radical views, but for a Puritan, it was radical.
Yeah.
She questioned things. That's all she did. She
Yep.
wasn't saying there's no God. She wasn't a witch. She wasn't anything close. She was very pious, and her father was a minister. But she questioned certain things and certain methods of applying the religion and applying the practice. They kicked her out of England. They sent her to the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They kicked her out of there, sent her to Rhode Island, which was a penal colony for a long time. The origin of Rhode Island it was sort of like Australia's origin. It was a penal colony for the Massachusetts Bay and Plymouth colonies. Then they kicked her out of there. And where did she come? She came to New Amsterdam.
Sure.
And that also happened with a lady named Lady Deborah Moody. These are all going to be episodes,
right?
Okay.
In this story and in the podcast.
Interesting. What did Anne Hutchinson wind up? Obviously they didn't throw her out of New York, did they?
Well, it didn't end well.
You just
for
let
her
them
in New York either.
You have to tune in. You have to tune into the podcast, Brian.
Don't tell them.
Yeah.
It's really the story. This epic story
Yes.
is just unbelievable every step of the way.
It is later.
After all that in her life, being kicked out of England, kicked out of Massachusetts, kicked out of Rhode Island, landing in New York, finding solace and finding where she really wanted to stay. She had a pretty large family. They set up essentially where the Split Rock Country Club is up in the Northeast Bronx.
Is that near Van Cortlandt or no?
No,
on the side.
So Van Cortlandt's on the other side. You're on the east side,
Sure.
up above Co-op City, above City Island.
Oh,
right?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Right where Pelham borders, it's sort of where Westchester borders the Bronx.
Yeah.
They lived there, and it was a real outpost. Nobody was up there.
Yeah.
That's why it became the Hutchinson River, because it was Hutchinson's land. There was no one up there. They're like, well, crazy old Anne Hutchinson. No, they weren't calling her crazy, but kooky old Anne Hutchinson and her family are up there. Well, they were only in New Netherland for a year and a half before they were slaughtered as a result of Keith's war by the Siwanoy Indians.
Okay.
So the story is just insane. Like, it just keeps going and turning and topsy-turvy and all different colors and twists and turns, and that I just think is fascinating.
So, Chance, how long have you been on this
Kick.
this mission of yours, right? I mean, you're passionate about it. It's
Yeah.
like, and it's just, I mean, it's fascinating, really. People, how much, people these days don't know any, like they know 20 years, 30 years of history about where they live. It's a lot.
Yeah. And it's not anyone's fault either. This is not right. It's not right at everyone's fingertips. You kind of got to dig, you know, and there's also a lot of false information out there. There's a lot of propaganda, as there, there's always going to be. Like I said, I've been in it for decades, but I kind of conceptualized, hey, oh, by the way, I didn't conceptualize it as that would be a great podcast. I conceived of it as, this is an incredible epic television series.
Because I can see it as you're speaking. Yes. I already imagine like the gnat sound, all the Foley and everything. Because the stories, it's not just he's telling you a story from a book. Like, you really get into all the characters. I keep closing my eyes because it brings me back when I'm listening to you. It's amazing. And then I don't know any of the words right now, but the terms for different groups. Not weedable. I don't even know.
What, the Walloons?
Yes.
Yeah. See, Walloons, like, who even knew who a Walloon was? What a Walloon was, right?
No.
And we're like,
what? The truth is, the Walloons founded this city. If they hadn't, first off, and it's all about oppression, right? The only reason New York came to be, preceded by New Amsterdam, was because of the oppression in Europe, and this whole thing about the Europeans came over and stole the land and this and that, and they were oppressed. They were oppressed. They were the oppressed peoples. They were the refugees. So people need to they really need to better understand what happened in this country, particularly in New York. New York was a refuge for everybody from all parts of the world. If you were oppressed, if you were cast out, this was where you came in the 17th century.
Right.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's documented. And they did not base it on race, creed, religion.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, religion was a serious thing back then, because Catholicism, it was life and death. These people were essentially chased out of Europe by by Habsburg Spain, by the Spanish Empire that ran the Habsburgs, that ran Spain, and they were very oppressive. It was a Catholic nation, and they were very imposing about Catholic. And Deez, I know you're Catholic, and I'm from a Catholic family.
Yeah,
it was a different flavor of Catholicism.
Sure.
It was oppressive, and it was, you will do this, or you will either be kicked out, violently, or we'll just kill you,
Right.
And the same went for the Jews. It was brutal. It was the Inquisition. It was the Spanish Inquisition that essentially sent people here. Well, that caused people to flee here.
Right.
Yeah. Religious freedom.
It was more like going to the moon than going to another country, because you came over on a wooden ship that might be 60 to 100 feet long, with no electricity, obviously, and no other power other than wind. And you slept below deck, and it was incredibly uncomfortable. There was no modern medicine. The trip took 2 months. And once you got here, you damn near froze to death in winter. And you had to build your houses. I mean, it was insane, the thought coming over here. So you really had to want it.
Yeah.
And clearly these people wanted it,
It's amazing the hardships that these settlers and pioneers had to deal with. I was watching something yesterday about the the railroads in Alaska. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because of the temperatures you were talking about. This one railroad was built in minus 30-degree weather. And they had basically dynamite and, limited tools. So, I mean, New York, New Amsterdam was built under similar conditions. I mean, albeit not that cold, but I mean, the elements were a serious issue.
They thought that the climate was a lot warmer than it was in the winter until they stayed here a couple winters. And those first winters were like 1625 and 6, where there were actually people coming over to settle the colony. There were ships that were coming and getting furs and going right back, but there was no one here really studying, well, these are our living conditions here, because they were all essentially living on ships until then. But it was cold and a lot of people died. I mean, it was just, there was no down coats and there was no modern heating, and they were living in these huts made of bark, It's hard to imagine.
It's amazing.
So is going into your journey with this, and do you find yourself gravitating toward one period of, it's basically a 300-year piece of New York that you're delving into? Do you find yourself having a favorite period, or you're just in love with it all?
I got to say, I am pretty much in love with it. Well, I mean, it felt like I was in love with the Hudson voyage.
Yeah.
Right? And then we go right into Adrian Block and all of that. Then we go into Hendrik Christensen. And to me, the important part is taking it detailed step for step. And, we do piece some things together. It is a little bit of detective work, but you can do it based on educated analysis. You can sort of fill in some of the gaps in an educated manner. I love that it's so chronological. Yeah. And that we will start in 1609 when there were no colonists here, put it that way. There were no Europeans. And in 1909, when this is a thriving city. Yeah. And you're in the modern age by then. And there's buildings and there's, political parties and corruption and everything else.
Yeah, Tammany Hall.
Yeah. I also love the fact that I'm lucky enough to have a family member who was part of this story. My great uncle took over. Are we getting feedback of some kind?
We're not.
You're not hearing it?
I just tapped the table.
All right. Oh. My great uncle John Kelly took over running Tammany Hall for Boss Tweed when they put Boss Tweed in jail finally.
Oh wow!
Way.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's part of this story.
Oh. Yeah.
And this is actually my uncle Hugh Kelly wrote this book. So when we're done with season 1 rather, I'm gonna skip forward and interview him anyway.
Oh, cool, yeah.
And give some previews to that. But all the eras interest me because this era also brings in somebody named Cornelius Vanderbilt, who is one of my favorite figures in the whole epic story, and is somebody who's related to somebody today who's pretty well known by the name of Anderson Cooper. And I've reached out to him. We've reached out to him, and we're trying to get him on the show at some point. Good. As a guest. He's related to half the people in this story. I mean, it's incredible.
I also love that when you say the original names of something and then the names of what we formerly, what we know of them now. I love that. Ooh, tell us what it really was.
Yeah, and some of the names are the same. Like there were the Hoboken Indians were right over where Hoboken is. Like you could look across back then at the lower part of Manhattan, look across and see Hoboken Indians over there. There were Raritan Indians just below them. There were Canarsie Indians on the lower point of Manhattan and across the East River.
Well, with that, we have fans that want to know if you're going to do this on New Jersey next.
Well, listen, there's a lot of New Jersey in this story. We've already been to Jersey somewhere, but we do get into there's a lot that happens in New Jersey. There's a huge event during Keith's War that happens on the Jersey side. But you got to keep in mind, it was all one colony back there. And that included, essentially New Netherland was roughly what the tri-state area is today. It actually makes a lot of sense. I've talked to people in this area about why don't we just make it one state? Because you're going over state lines and these rules change and those rules change. They had it as one colony. They had a good idea. So when we get into all the stuff down in New Sweden and those parts of the story in 1638, 9, 10, forward 1638, 39, 1640 and forward, that's all southern Jersey. That's where New Sweden was. It was going down towards Delaware.
Cool.
So there's a lot of New Jerseys in this, and maybe I will do something with Jersey after the 1909 mark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you ever think chance this could just be like a venture for you or a passion that could just keep going? I mean, you're looking at just from obviously, let's face it, New York is what it is, right? It's just a lot of people consider it the epicenter of the world, business-wise, culture. Yeah. Others argue that, but being here, from the United States, we think New York is the center of the universe sometimes. But do you feel like this is something that you could see doing with other areas in the country, like going up and, it just could mushroom and keep
well, yeah. I mean, some people have said that to me, and I obviously I love doing it. I really enjoy doing it. And I would like to apply it to other areas of history and other contexts of history. And I think it's a good format. Lauren, your comment is the best compliment you can pay us, which is I close my eyes and I can see it before me.
I love it.
That's the purpose. I mean, that's the objective.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, and I put it up on one of our promos. We have high school age kids and middle school age kids listening to this.
That's great.
Now, I wish that existed when I was in school because I couldn't stand history when I was in school. You know?
And they're talking at you, but this is like you're there. You're, like whoa. I see them getting off the ship and everything happening.
Well, that's intentional. I'm glad you see that. What we try to do is apply as many of the five senses as we can to this telling of the story. And there's simple ways to do that. What did it smell like? What did it sound like? What
also,
did
your cadence
feel like?
of the way you describe it too. Like you have perfect timing for everything. Also,
well, that's very nice.
Well, if you need anybody, if you need anybody to fill in and make some bull noises,
or train noises,
I'm a good. I can do a good bull.
Listen, we always need good voices and noises. We have a lot of them, and we've had some really good voices on it. It's just the character voices. We always say the main character's name at the beginning of the episode, and I've had to really seek out those, people that can really do the accents well.
That's so cool.
Oh, that's cool. So I'm forgive me that then that's a big part of the process too, is having different actors, I guess you would call them, or right?
Pre-production,
right? And
to get it all.
To get all the voices for that's got to be a bit of a process.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of play acting, but I like we say the character's name in character at the top of every show. So it's been Henry Hudson, and then it's been Adrian Block, then Hendrik Christensen, then it was Sarah Rapalje, and then it was who was five? Peter Minuit. Right. And each one is in, because they're all different ethnicity. They're all different
backgrounds. Yeah,
nationalities. Hudson was an Englishman. Adrian Block was Dutch. Hendrik Christensen was also Dutch. Sarah Rapalje was a Walloon. She was French. She was French-speaking Protestant from what is today Belgium. And Pierre Minuit was the same, but he came from Wesel, Germany. Before they left the Spanish Netherlands first.
That's so cool. So tell us how people can find your podcast. And for Droid users like myself, I think we have to find Apple something and
the link tree is the best link for our podcast.
So we have the link tree up.
That offers every podcast directory that we're on. Podcast directory is like Spotify, Apple, I like Google, okay, or I like Podchaser, or I like whichever ones we're on. With one click, you can go there.
Oh, that's great.
And the link tree can also take you to our website where we have some more, more info and info on the guests. And we have some artwork to, support the episodes and stuff.
The artwork is amazing. And even the overall art for the podcast, I love it.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's really the Costello map, and it is luckily in public domain, but then we put our own logo on it.
Yeah.
And it is really colorful. It's informative. If you look at it, you can see where the Charging Bull is right now, and you can see exactly where I'm talking about, where the fort was, and then you can trace that. That's Broadway.
Yeah.
That's not like that road didn't disappear.
Right.
That's not only our Broadway, that was there for hundreds of years before that as an Indian trail. We talk about that a little bit, about that specifically in episode 5, and we'll talk more about it. That trail starts to tell the story of this thing.
Oh, you guys can see it.
Yeah, there it is. I mean,
I love it.
So what you have here, that big artery coming down on the west side of the island, that's Broadway. Wow. Now that wasn't built by the Dutch. That was built by the Indians, by the Native Americans thousands of years ago. And it goes all the way up the island, but then it actually, you would get in a canoe or a sloop or whatever, take it across Spite and Dival and continue on.
Yeah.
And it would take you as far as Albany in one direction and eventually Boston in the other direction. And there's that becomes part of the story as we go forward.
Interesting.
That's so cool. I mean, really,
that
the educational perspective is just outstanding. I'm so glad that high school students and middle school students are taking advantage of this, because everything as we know it with school right now, it's very hard for the kids to connect. And everything that you do, it's interactive basically. And I think that's so important. But I also want you to tell us about what's going on now. What projects are you working on now besides the podcast?
Yeah, I will. And by the way, just before we leave the podcast, the one other thing you can do on the link tree is contact us. And we really want people to contact us and tell us what they think and what they like. And just like you said, Lauren, you love the way you can see and hear it and smell it. The fella from the high school that's how he contacted me. He sent us an email and told me it's awesome. So please, people should feel encouraged to do that. And it helps us shape the show too,
That's awesome.
Go ahead.
I feel like I can even feel like the dirt in the air from being back then. Do you know what I mean? Like with no cars and there's just dirt flying all over from just the horses and everything. Maybe that's too much. Sorry.
Chip crumbs.
Oh yeah, I was sleeping and I was like, I can't breathe.
Maybe it was a past life experience. Maybe you were.
I'm going back.
A colonist in a 17th century colonist.
Except for my outfit.
You were.
I mean, look at these cheekbones.
Yeah, definitely. I think you were there.
Indian.
Yeah, she definitely has.
Yeah.
So episodes 6 and 7 are being written as one double episode. And they're going to be a little delayed because I did book a project, an acting project that I'll leave in a couple of weeks and go shoot. The film is called American Underdog, the Kurt Warner story.
Oh, wow.
And it's about quarterback Kurt Warner, who won the Super Bowl for the Rams in 1999. I don't know if the Super Bowl was 99 or 2000. I always forget, but it was the 99 season, I believe.
Against the Titans, right?
Yes, but an incredible story.
Yeah, the Titans.
Completely true, obviously. And a great story, a great American story. And like I was saying earlier, this is on par with Rocky and Rudy and that kind of, and Hoosiers. It's incredibly well written, the script. And I played Mike Martz, Coach Mike Martz, who was the offensive coordinator when they won. And the offense that Kurt Warner ran on the Rams came to be known as the greatest show on turf, because it was very fast, dynamic, quick release, very athletic receivers, that type of offense. And Warner himself was just a phenomenal, unusual talent. And, a little bit of history right there, the movie itself. So I've been preparing for that and getting ready to go off and shoot that in a couple of weeks. So
Awesome.
so episode 6 and 7 will have to they'll be delayed a little bit. They'll come out probably in late March or April, but they'll come closer together than they usually do. So it's it's almost like we'll catch up, and the season will be complete by the end of April.
Well, that's great, because in the meantime, everyone can watch the movies at the Garden State Film Festival, March 23rd to the 28th, and then pick up with your podcast when you're ready in April.
Excellent. The podcast will wait. Watch the Garden State movies. Guys.
That's right.
Do that first. We'll wait for you with the podcast.
Yeah. We're so excited for this.
Hey, Chance, just to backtrack about the movie. Where is it being shot, you said? What location you're going to?
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And what's the name of the movie going to be? Or is it out yet?
It's American Underdog.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The Kurt Warner story.
Okay. I apologize.
Yeah. I think they're just going by American Underdog, but it's
That's cool.
Yeah. And then any expected release date, or was that too soon?
I haven't heard, but it's generally close to a year by the time they, do everything they have to do in their post-production and all that and their marketing. But it's going to be good. The
right.
Zach Levi, I might be saying his name wrong. Zach Levy. I don't know. Zach Levi is the lead. He plays Kurt Warner. He's great. He's perfect. Dennis Quaid plays Dick Vermeil, who's our head coach.
Interesting.
And I never worked with him, so
cool.
I've always been a big fan of his. So that's going to be fun. And it should be good. It should be a good story.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, we're always here for you. We want to promote whatever you're doing.
Thank you.
You're part of the family.
Yep.
And we're excited that this podcast is not only amazing, but the educational components alone are just outstanding, because these are the things we really want to know and nobody's talking about them. So thank you so much for doing the research. I can't imagine how many hours are spent on the research side.
Yeah, it takes a few hours.
Yeah. And then whittling down.
And I read really slow, like really slow. So,
not as slow as me.
Don't be so sure. I go really, really slow. I daydream as I read. My imagination starts going off, and then I'm like, I've only gone half a page, and I'm sitting there an hour.
But is what makes it so good, because that daydreaming part, you add that in.
I guess so,
yeah.
My historian friend said, he goes, you know what? Your speculation is inspiring. We're not allowed to do that as historians, so I'm glad you're doing it. I was like, oh,
maybe that's a new market, history speculation.
You got to do a little bit of it. Not too much, just a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
That's funny.
Fascinating. Well, we have the link tree up. We have everything up, and then we will continue to post it and send it out. Oh, we'll also send an e-blast to all of our Garden State Film Festival contacts that we have to be able to share this with them.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Chance, sounds like you got a really great thing going here.
Thanks, buddy.
Happy you got a real passion about it and a mission.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything else that we should share about it that we didn't cover, you think?
No, just listen in order.
Yeah.
Seriously, we will wait. You're not gonna miss anything. Start with Hudson, go to Block,
right.
Then go to Christensen, then go to Sarah Rapalje, and then go to Pierre Minuit, because you need to meet these characters along the way. It is just like a TV show.
Yes.
If you don't watch episode 2, you're not going to know who Henrik Jaak Elkins is in episode 9, 8.
I did try that, and I had to go back.
Yeah, so you just do it in order, do it the right way from the beginning, and then you don't have to revisit. And be interactive. Tell us what you like. Contact us, all that.
So it's unlike the Honeymooners, where you can watch the Honeymooners in any order.
Yeah. And also, if you don't want to seem old-fashioned and email, you can join all our social media, and you can message us via the social media, whether it's the LinkedIn, the Instagram messaging, or the Facebook messaging, or whatever the heck it is. Twitter, we're on Twitter.
Awesome. All right, cool.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Cool. Yeah, we're thrilled. And then we'll have to have you back to talk about after the film and how the process was.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm sure it's going to be a fun job. So.
All right, cool. Thank you so much, Chance.
Thank you guys, and give my best to Diane and you all.
We will. Thank you. And then again, the Garden State Film Festival presents March 23rd to the 28th, 2021. We are live in person at 4 venues, but all of the other films are online. So you don't have to leave your home. You can stay in your pajamas and eat ice cream and watch the films March 24th to the 28th. Thank you so much. Tune in. Visit gsff.org for more information or email me at lauren@gsff.org. All right. Peace out. We're doing the sideways piece.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thanks. Have a good day.
Seeing you as always. All right.
Bye.
All right. See you, Chance.